Liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. It's good to be back doing Pledge of Allegiance after so long. Okay, first of all, let me just make sure that we've got with us today, Ann, Michelle, Austin, Stephanie, I see John and Jen. Lori, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Jerry now. Jim, are you still with us? Jessica?
I'm here.
Okay, John? I see you. John. Here. Okay, so the only one, Jim, are you back yet? Okay, well, I think that's everybody. If I missed somebody, I apologize. Okay, first order of business is the approval of the minutes of September 24th. Can I have a motion for that approval?
So moved.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that carries. All right, and then we'll now have the report of our Chief Executive, Catherine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the board and everyone attending in person and virtually. May I please have a moment of silence for the following retired Port Authority employees who we lost in September. Operators Ronald Kraus, Christopher Golofsky, Wayne Smith, Philip Gazzo, George Lutz, James Merriman, and James Johnston. Seat and sign repair person Dale Wittenmeyer, courier David Hurley, and associate contract administrator Patricia Reese. Additionally, we are very, very sorry to learn of the recent passing of active employees Sherman Smith, an 11-year veteran operator who worked out of West Mifflin and Collier, and Mark Mosqueda, who worked in heavy maintenance for 27 years. Our hearts go out to their families and friends. Thank you. At the beginning of the pandemic, which we all thought would take 2 weeks, businesses and schools closed, employees were told to work from home, and all of us were asked not to leave our houses if we didn't need to. Our ridership fell 90%. We were not unique. This happened across the country. The pandemic took the mass out of mass transit. After 18 difficult months of always hoping the end is right around the corner, I'm delighted to report that we experienced our highest ridership increase since the start of the pandemic from August coming into September. It's been a slow but steady increase, but we had over 100,000 passenger trips a day on bus last month. Pre-pandemic, we were over 200,000 trips, so this is a 50% return for service. With every mile driven, the safety of our passengers and our staff is our first and foremost concern. The important role that public transit plays in our region has been made very, very apparent, whether it's essential employees going to work at doctors' offices, grocery stores, or anywhere else. Our work has never stopped. We're thankful to those who have stayed with us, those who've come back to us, and to those who will be riding with us again soon. Ridership has a long way to go since February 2020, but we've grown very strongly in this past year as folks are resuming their normal patterns. Bus ridership is still just about 50% of pre-pandemic. Light rail is 73% down, so we're averaging 27% of our pre-pandemic ridership. So we have moved bus service around. Our 600 buses that are on the road are still on the road during rush hour. They're just not where they used to be. We've shifted away from commuter routes where we had very light ridership into routes which were very heavily used during the pandemic. We all remember the 15 and 25 passenger capacity caps. So we've moved service around to address that. As those caps have been lifted, we've moved service around again to make sure that if we're serving a hospital, it's not once an hour. We had pulled back our use of 2-train cars down to single trains. We did bring 2-car trains out in September in anticipation of strong ridership popping up in Oakland, and we did not see a growth in that ridership. What we are seeing is 2 things are true at the same time. Rail is at 27% of pre-pandemic ridership, and the way that we think about full train cars and full buses is very different than it was 2 years ago. Now, my personal example is if you're behind me at the grocery store now, like you used to be, I'll stand sideways and spread out. I caught the red line yesterday to go talk to Princess Ferguson down at Dormont. We all remember Princess from Station Square. She continues to be amazing. And on my ride, there were seats open because people did not want to sit next to others. And when more seats opened, the gentleman sitting next to me said, "Hey, nothing personal," and he moved. I was like, "No offense taken." So again, we're at a quarter of our previous capacity, and we feel really differently about how full that is. So we continue to put extra service out for rail events, Steelers games, Penn games, when we know we'll be overloaded. We are getting better ridership counts, very accurate ridership counts, and are ready, based on what we see from ridership, to add insert cars. Not a return to the 2-car trains for many of the reasons we've discussed, but adding insert cars as soon as we have stronger ridership numbers to start relieving those loads. We also encourage our passengers to remember, in many cases, for instance, if you're at Washington Junction and your train is full, wait 4 minutes and the next train probably is not. So again, trains are not near the capacity limits that we're used to, and we want to think differently about those capacity constraints. Even before the pandemic, we were also in a constant hiring crunch. What we're looking at too here with our trains is stations that don't have off-board fare collectors. We lose revenue if we have a 2-car train out there. And we all know that second car is much more likely to have folks not wearing a mask or not being as aware of the needs of the passengers around them. Despite these challenges, though, our in-service percentage is down just 1%. So we are running over 98% of our scheduled trips every day. I'm very proud of the service we get out there. We're doing our best as we continue to serve our neighbors and our community. Appreciate your time, your ridership, and coming back with us as we start getting that mass back in mass transit. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, unless there are questions, this concludes my comments.
Thanks, Catherine. Are there any questions? How about from the virtual world? Okay, thanks. In that case, we'll move on to the report of the Performance and Oversight Committee from the Chair, Michelle Zmianek. I'll continue to engage the virtual participants by asking individuals to make the motion in second. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. The Performance Oversight Committee met last week, and I have 6 resolutions for your consideration this morning. The committee first reviewed 3 procurement items and determined the bids to be in accordance with the authority's procurement policies and procedures, the prices fair and reasonable, the bidders to be responsible, and the bids responsive. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends the award of bids listed in the resolution for the total amount of approximately $3 million. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Ann, can you make that motion? So moved. Jerry, would you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That motion carries.
The next resolution seeks authorization to extend and amend an agreement with Interstate Acquisition Services to provide real estate consulting services. On September 29th, 2017, the authority's board authorized the award of an agreement to Interstate Acquisition Services, a division of Century Engineering, to provide real estate consulting services on an as-needed basis through task-specific work orders. The agreement provided for an initial term of 3 years and the total not to exceed amount of $1,062,200, with the option to extend an additional 2 years at the sole discretion of the authority. The board authorized the authority to exercise the first option year through December 31st, 2021, and increase the total not to exceed amount to $1,512,000. Last week, the Performance Oversight Committee agreed to recommend exercising the second option year through December 31st, 2022, and to increase the not to exceed amount by $350,000 to ensure that there are sufficient funds to continue to pay for these services. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Austin, can you make that motion?
So moved.
Lori, could you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next resolution
Director
seeks
Edwin, I'm on the phone. This is Jim Brewster. Sorry.
Thanks for joining, Jim.
The next resolution seeks authorization to award a construction contract for the West Mifflin Garage Perimeter Paving and Site Improvements Project. After review of the bids, it has been determined that the bid of Swank Construction Company, LLC, is the lowest responsive bid from a responsible bidder, meeting the authority's requirements for the contract. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends entering into a contract with Swank Construction Company, LLC, in the amount of $7,998,101.85. The Performance Oversight Committee also recommends entering into a lease with DSH Associates for a term of up to 3 years and a total rental amount not to exceed $194,000 for the use of their property for employee parking during the construction. My fellow members, I respectfully request that the board approve this resolution.
Stephanie, can you make that motion?
So moved.
Jessica, would you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
The next resolution seeks authorization to enter into a construction agreement with Norfolk Southern Railway Company and CSX Transportation Incorporated for the Martin Luther King Jr. East Busway Bridge Rehabilitation Project. The authority is planning a state of good repair project to rehabilitate bridges along the East Busway. In order to complete the project, and because the bridges are directly adjacent to and/or in the aerial space above the active railroad tracks and the railroad infrastructure owned by Norfolk Southern Railway Company and the CSX Transportation Incorporated, the authority requires construction agreements from both parties. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends entering into a construction agreement with Norfolk in the amount of $239,505 and a construction agreement with CSX in the amount of $183,308. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Jim, can you make that motion?
So moved.
Jen, would you second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
The next resolution seeks authorization to enter into agreements with a pool of firms to provide general architecture and engineering contract services under the categories of roadway and site work design and building and structural design. The proposal submitted in the category of roadway and site work design by AECom Technical Services Incorporated and Michael Baker International Incorporated, and in the category of building and structure design by AECom Technical Services Incorporated and Gannett Fleming Incorporated, have been determined to be the highest rated proposals for the performance of services. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends entering into agreements with the above firms for the identified services for a total not to exceed amount of $20 million to be allocated on an as-needed basis through task-specific work orders for an initial 4-year period with the option to extend the term of up to 1 additional year at the sole discretion of the authority. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Sean, you want to make that motion?
So moved.
Ann, could you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
The final resolution I have for you today seeks authorization to enter into agreements with a pool of firms for light rail transit systems contract services under the categories of LRV and LRT systems design and way and facilities systems design. The proposal submitted in the LRV and the LRT systems design category by WSP USA Incorporated and HNTB Corporation, and the way and facilities systems design by HNTB Corporation and Mott MacDonald LLC have been determined to be the highest rated proposals for the performance of the services. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends entering into agreements with these firms of the identified categories for a total not to exceed amount of $25 million to be allocated on an as-needed basis through task-specific work orders for an initial 5-year term with the option to extend the term an additional 2 years at the sole discretion of the authority. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Rostin, can you make that motion?
So moved.
Stephanie, can you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
That concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll next have a report from our Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee from Mr. Chair John Tegg. John, you're on. No, John, we do like to hear from you every once in a while, so yeah, if you could turn off your mute button.
He's having issues.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members and fellow stakeholders. The Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee met last week. I have a few updates for the board. First is the Transit-Oriented Development, TOD. Maura Egler, Transit-Oriented Community Project Manager, provided the committee with an evaluation of the TOD in Allegheny County after 5 years of a formal Port Authority program. Key findings. TOD brings changes in housing and demographics. In an area where little TOD activity occurred, there was little change. However, where development has occurred, there is significant evidence of displacement and decreased in affordable housing. Positive changes occurred as well, like an increase in number of jobs and the general population. In order to live up to the principles and goals and values we have set for ourselves as an agency, we must find a way to encourage more equitable, transit-oriented development. The recommendations to encourage equitable TOD include policies related to TOD zoning, affordable housing policy, finance mechanisms, infrastructure investments, parking, encourage employment-based TOD, and sustainability. The Port Authority cannot make these changes alone. We must work with our partnership with the City of Pittsburgh, surrounding municipalities, and a group such as Connect to tackle these issues and implement real change. The second thing was on access. Emily Gouache of Access gave a presentation on customer service and safety to on the access system. The customer service call center takes 8,500 calls per month. They have 4 full-time staffers and 1 part-time staffer. I was very impressed with the access safety standards, which include robust driver screening and training. They have a driver monitoring program, which has also been successful in decreasing reportable events. And I will add to that, and I've said this in the meeting, that the access is an important part of our Port Authority family. Third, the Allegheny Transit Council, ACTC, met this past Wednesday. The council received updates on public school students using the bus that's Pittsburgh Public School System, students using the bus to commute to and from school. Head sign issues on the buses, bus stop improvements and shelter requirements, and operator recruitment efforts. Then the fourth thing and last thing on the agenda, on my report, is the Committee for Accessible Transportation will have its quarterly meeting on Thursday, November 4th. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions for John? Thanks. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to the report of the Finance Committee from the Chair, Anna Gore.
Good morning, Chair, fellow board members. The Finance Committee met last week, and I have 2 resolutions for your consideration. First, Controller Peter Sheng presented a resolution to amend and extend an agreement with Marquette Associates, Inc. to provide Chief Investment Officer consulting services for the Consolidated Pension Plan. The Consolidated Pension Plan is a closed plan representing eligible non-union police and IBEW employees. In September 2018, the authority's board approved a 3-year contract with Marquette Associates for a not-to-exceed amount of $643,930 and 2 additional option years at the authority's sole discretion. It has been determined that the work has been satisfactory and that it is in the authority's best interest to extend the agreement to November 30th, 2022. This amendment would increase the previously approved not-to-exceed amount to $867,780. My fellow board members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Lori, can you make that motion?
So moved.
Jessica, can you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Next, Chief Legal Officer Michael Centra presented a resolution authorizing the adoption of a customer service telework policy. Mr. Centra reported that as part of the June 2021 collective bargaining agreement with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 29, it was agreed that a joint union management work committee would be formed to develop and recommend to the board a customer service department telework policy. The proposed customer service telework policy contains eligibility requirements, a provision mandating a minimum of 3 days in the office and 2 days remote, and performance monitoring and evaluation standards. If adopted, this policy can be amended, suspended, or terminated at the discretion of Port Authority's management with notification to IBEW leadership and impacted employees. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Stephanie, can you make that motion?
So moved.
Michelle, would you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Following the presentation of resolutions, DBE, DB Program Manager Sue Brodus presented an overview of the responsibilities and objectives of her office, which include disadvantaged business enterprise and diverse business certification, compliance, and outreach. Ms. Brodus reported that the number of DBE certifications processed by her office increased by 22.3% from February 2019 to September 2021. She provided a breakdown of certification by gender and ethnicity. It was also reported that the DBE program follows Code of Federal Regulation Title 49, Part 26, whereby the authority is required to have a DBE goal requirement on all federally funded projects. Ms. Brodus also reported on the diverse business requirements on state-funded projects. Under state law, contractors on these projects are required to make a good faith effort identifying general construction or professional service opportunities and utilizing DBs as subcontractors. Finally, Controller Peter Schenk reported on the September financial results. It was reported that total operating income for both the month of September and the first quarter was under budget by $4.2 million and $21.1 million respectively due to lower passenger revenues from lower pandemic ridership levels. Mr. Schenk also reported that ARPA funding will be utilized to make up for this shortfall once a spot audit of federal stimulus funding invoicing is completed by the Federal Transit Administration. Total expenses for the month of September were $4.1 million under budget and $16.1 million under budget for the fiscal year. This variance was due to the lower employee benefit expense from vacant positions, lower material and supply expense, lower professional service expense due to reduced levels of work done by outside contractor expense, and reduced other expense due to a timing issue with software licensing. Total subsidy for the month of September was $9.04 million below budget due to a reduced federal stimulus invoicing and a timing issue with state operating assistance. Finally, Mr. Schenk reported that as of September 30th, the authority had $127.6 million in operating reserves. Mr. Chairman, unless there are any other questions or comments, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Ann. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, then with that, we'll move on to any new business. So is there any items of new business? Okay, we're now ready then for public comments. Our first speaker is Ralph Williams, and I'll remind everybody about our 3-minute time limit on public comment. Mr. Williams? So are you virtual or in person? Okay, and with that, we'll move on to Peter O'Grady. Okay, how about Anthony Capretto? Jeff, just making sure we're not experiencing technical difficulties here. No? Okay, so none of these people showed up. Okay, James Cuniff. Stephen Hopkins. Okay, Mr. Babwani, you've got the whole sole floor.
Good morning, thank you very much.
I can't give you the other 15 minutes that we just said.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Complaint number October 2nd, 2021, reference number 74158. To whom it may concern, the resident of Mount Lebanon and Upper St. Clair wish to thank Port Authority Transit of Allegheny County for doing everything that it has up until now to improve our community. the following few areas still need to be addressed. Putting a 36 Banksville bus stop sign at the intersection of Cedars Boulevard, Wilkinson Road, Panthers Run Road, where car, bus, and truck drivers alike can see it from where they are either approaching or waiting at the signal on Cedar. Maybe you could place it on the main signal pole underneath the other sign parked on the island at a slight angle from the traffic island as you proceed into the bend into Panthers Run Road itself. Second, the 36 Banksville bus drivers refuse to stop at the light at the Cedars Boulevard, Wilkinson, and Panthers, leaving pedestrians to navigate the street leading up to the island themselves. There is a distance of approximately 40 yards between the last 36 bus stop and the island at the Cedars Boulevard, Wilkinson, Panthers. During the summer, it's a lighter, longer outside, and the people are wearing a brighter and more colorful clothing and elsewhere, making them more visible to drivers. Now that it is getting colder and everyone's clothing, like coats and scarves, are much darker and not as visible as those in the summer months. As a result, because the drivers are in a hurry, using their cell phones or texting devices, drivers are distracted and sometimes nearly hit those pedestrians walking along the Cedars towards the island at the Cedars Boulevard, Wilkinson and Panthers. There is a steep mound of earth resting along this path that is unused and that has no light overhead. The current situation along Cedar Boulevard is an accident waiting to happen. Third, lastly, the traffic control switch at Wilkinson on the same side at the Crisp Pizzeria restaurant on the Panthers Run Road side, only 20 yards from the popular eatery, continuously freezes once the temperature goes below 20 degrees, nullifying any request by pedestrians to cross the Panthers Run Road towards the traffic island, Cedars Boulevard, and Wilkinson. As a result, people impatient for the walk icon to appear across on their own initiative on a road where people already speed far too often. Sometimes something needs to be done to fix this button.
Thank you, Mr. Robwani.
If you have any
Mr. Robwani, your time is, your allotted time is over. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Well, if you have a letter you want to give to us, we'll take that.
Yeah, and I have some pictures and the people have signed this.
Okay,
papers.
please give that and we'll take that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next regularly scheduled meeting is November 19th, and unless there are any questions or comments, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes.